Our first reader is Donna Pucciani. She is a longtime fan of Waterline Writers and a frequent reader. She has published poetry on 4 continents. Her work has been translated into Japanese, Chinese, German, and Italian. Her 7th and most recent book of poetry is Edges. It's available here tonight for $15. She is reading from her chapbook, Ghost Garden, which traces her genealogical adventures finding her roots in Italy. That's also available for $10. Please welcome Donna.
Thank you so much, Waterline, for having me again, and thank you all for coming out on this less than delightful evening weather-wise. This evening it's my pleasure to read from my recent chapbook, Ghost Garden, which details my struggles to research and locate my family here and in Italy. So my reading tonight is dedicated to the Pucciani family here and in Italy. I will start with a poem called Find Me. My family and I are from the same little village of San Donato, which is located on the buckle of the boot of Italy. And I have a picture over there on the table that you can check out during the intermission. Find me. What is this new need for mystery? To connect with people I have never met, who share the same name. To telephone strangers, write to Italy describing my grandfather, send photos of my father and ask, do you recognize this boy? I know I exist in the moment when a letter arrives from an unknown cousin in Akron or Milan. I blame myself for letting my grandparents' tales of San Donato di Nenea fall through my childish fingers. I don't want to die before I hear from Angelo's widow in Fairview, New Jersey, where my father was born, or know if Francesca, Alfredo's wife in Pittsburgh, got the photos and held them to the light, trembling. I am sleepy with the fullness of family. I dream of Franco, the businessman from Milan, disappearing like smoke into the mountain. Filippo, the proctologist, writing passionately of rectal prolapse at the University of Florence. Oreste, who wore white suits and translated Phaedra at UCLA. And Jean in Ohio, who teaches children middle C on the keyboard and knows in her heart that, like me, she is a Tuscan princess. I'm not scared of dying, but only of making the journey alone. Accounts written by women in car accidents, men having heart attacks, tell about the great light, ancestors beckoning, a picnic in the sky above Siena, a long table dressed in linen, fashionable men twirling pasta on golden forks, old women in black cutting polenta into squares, my grandfather opening the Chianti, and uncles cracking chestnuts and rude jokes. So I say to my ancestors and their progeny the words I've just read in a fashion magazine at Naples Airport advertising leather handbags. Find me, hold me, keep me. The poem, The Documents, details my feelings of awe and wonder at receiving the original birth and marriage certificates from Cosenza, the city in Calabria, southern Italy, which houses all the files for the surrounding villages and towns. This poem also addresses the challenges that I faced in doing the research, the reading of the century-old European-style handwriting, deciphering the manuscripts which were often damaged by water, mold, and storage. The documents. The marriage certificate of my great-great-grandfather arrived yesterday from Cosenza. We are all born to die. This ink attests to the dark bliss in between. The bride in her homemade cotton dress opens like a gardenia. Carlo Maria, the groom, stands very straight on the stone steps of Holy Trinity Church. A century later, I hold this page like a relic. Words crouch like nocturnal animals. S looks like F. P could be anything at all. A woman standing in the night, her dark hair blowing, or smoke from a cigar. And this word here, a goat grazing. The paper becomes their skin, their scribbled hair the sea, the spaces in between their toothless mouths widening like the dark valley below the Polino. Their eyes stare back from the loops of the V that is really an R for Rosa. Raffaele Monaco witnessed the wedding. Another signed himself Civile, middle class. My bis nonno is listed contadino, peasant farmer. The parents' names are blackbirds with wings folded on paper for future generations. The sindaco, or mayor, is N. Capolongo. The rest are berries staining a hillside, eyelashes lowered in sleep. My first telephone call to one of my cousins in Italy, Pasquale Pucciani, whom I discovered in the records, required much courage, especially with my minimal Italian. I wanted to verify that my great-great-grandfather was Pasquale's great-grandfather, apparently with two different mothers, as the first wife often died in childbirth from illness or sheer exhaustion. That and the Italian tradition, which requires the children to be named after their grandparent, resulted in a great number of Francescos and Carlos hopscotching through the generations. So that made the research difficult. Coraggio, I told myself as I dialed the phone number Pasquale had sent me from Bergamo via email, and now we are very good friends. Phoning Pasquale. Bergamo to Chicago. The voice of Pasquale sings the halting tune that foreigners await. Pronto. I have phoned a stranger to search for ancestors. The telephone becomes a bird settling on my mouth, delivering from its beak the cosmos in the voice of a man. Is my perhaps cousin interrupted from paying bills, twirling pasta with a fork at the kitchen table, watching the news? I begin. Buonasera, mi chiamo. I wrote my script on an old envelope. Si, booms the voice. Is he turning down the television, drinking wine, settling his glass down carefully? I admit, non parlo italiano, ma capisco un po'. We play in the shadow of Babel, tracing the fragile lines of language on the tower walls, climbing the ladder of each other's voices. I stall, searching for words that should curl on the lips the way a gust of wind blows the curtains in like vagabond ghosts. I hear him say, dimmi, tell me. I sprinkle handfuls of sand, lentamente per favore, and scusami, ripeta. My verbs wear all the wrong endings. I dress masculine and feminine. Prepositions splatter like spilt milk. Nouns hopscotch among infinitives, leaving articles behind as broken chalk. His wife knows English, but she is not there. Should I telephone tomorrow? But he won't hear of it. There it is, the desire to speak, chewing foreign words like strange cake. We are children mouthing gibberish, exchanging syllables like toys. We find the right word too late. Meaning has moved on, lurching down the road to paradox. He was a math teacher, I English, bound to different sets of symbols. Like prisoners in adjacent cells, we tap the pipes, signal through walls, wait for the same rhythm to return the transatlantic echo of ourselves. We talk this way for 20 minuti. I find my great-grandfather Saverio, born 1848, 1848, not 1868, no, 1848, è vero. I spend the night remembering the words I've searched for, sweeping them up like birdseed. The next poem is basically a love song to the Mediterranean, the sea on which my ancestors lived. To the Med, on a flight from Chicago. You are the one I've been waiting for without realizing it. Not the postcard bikini sands, but soft fluids that hold me in the womb of memory. And although you may have seen me from afar, long before I was born, and shone a light on the mountains and the flesh of my flesh in stone-tumbled houses 2 centuries ago when the sun was hot and the moon high, and they tossed in their beds restless as the tide, I had to live 6 decades before I met you, and oh, your blue is the hue of the mammoth lake that I call home, the color of my eyes, your sky, and the blood that spirals out of my heart and into yours. I'll finish with a couple of poems about my grandfather. The first is called Carlo's Axe. Now, my grandpa Carlo emigrated to New York through Ellis Island in 1903. He was an honest and hardworking carpenter who built his own house in West New York, New Jersey, across the Hudson River. And one day, the local mafia boss apparently rang the doorbell. Carlo's Axe, West New York, circa 1922. My grandfather, glowing in white shirt sleeves, descended the stairs to ground level where terracotta tiled the darkness with the clay of Calabria. Opening one glass and wood door, then another, onto the pavement, he listened motionless to offers of protection. Turning neatly on his well-cobbled heels, hammered by Uncle Ralph down the street, he disappeared into the basement room where the washer wrung out clothes and canned figs and eggplant lined the shelves. Retrieving an axe among jars of marinara, he met the eyes of the Sicilian thug with his own steel, and, feet apart on the lintel, spoke more quietly than the light blessing his shining pate, offering to split the dog-faced mafioso down the middle. My grandfather related this story decades later, my grandfather having dropped dead at a friend's after pasta and Chianti. Courage is a tool polished by laughter, with a blade sharp as the sickle of moon over the Hudson. Some of you may have noticed on the way in tonight, on the front table there, a rather battered-looking horn. So I'll finish with a description of Grandpa's horn. Marked Milano in tiny letters, with a trumpet mouthpiece stuck in its forlorn aperture, it bleat like a sheep on a hill in Italy whenever a toothless grandmother in a stained calico apron proclaimed the feast. It is not hard to imagine my grandfather dusting off his horn, tying a rag around his head, and donning his white tunic for the procession. Aunt Maria nearly threw it into the rubbish after he died. Tarnished brass, broken pistons, stuck valves, something between a pee-wee tuba and a French horn, its bell dented, old as Grandpa, but not dead yet, and ready to sing. The band director at the high school shrugged his shoulders, took it to the music store in town where gurus of orchestral instruments had never seen anything like it. It had sailed with Grandpa, crowded into steerage on the Città di Milano in 1903, or packed in some mysterious trunk stashed next to the engine that steamed its way into New York Harbor under the gaze of the verdigris lady. Now it sits on the piano, wrapped in silence and dust. Memories encased in its muted bell pronounce the death of ritual, the demise of devotion, the disappearance of saints into a smooth, convoluted tube where, at one end, I touch my lips to the place where my grandfather's neatly trimmed mustache brushed brass a century ago in the streets of Calabria. Thank you.